Welcome to a Champion's Journey podcast. I'm Matt Davidson. From an early age, I've had the privilege of learning from world champions and world-class performers, and I've always been fascinated by what drives them to the pinnacle of achievement. In this podcast, I'll interview high performers to learn more about the tactics and strategies which have helped them on the road to championship victory. The intent of a Champion's Journey podcast is to interview not only those who have stood on the top podium in arenas of high-level competition, but to learn from those who have conquered life's greatest challenges and have dared to live life on their own terms. This episode is brought to you by Performance Designs. PD is a world-class parachute manufacturer who's been setting the industry standard for almost 40 years. PD has recently introduced the Sabre 3, the third canopy in a lineage of amazing, world-renowned wings. But it's not just a new wing, it's a better wing. It redefines the Sabre name. Crisp handling, consistent on-heading openings, huge dynamic speed range, incredible landings, more power, and seriously responsive to inputs. PD athletes and test jumpers agree that this will be one of the most sought-after canopies in the world for intermediate to expert skydivers. It's the next greatest all-around 9-cell modern canopy. Justin Blewitt is a 4-time world 8-way Formation Skydiving Champion, currently serving as head parachute rigger on the U.S. Army parachute team. The conversation in this episode was a special one for me, as Justin, also known as Bizz, is one of my closest friends and is the teammate I worked closest with for the better part of 10 years. Justin's journey has been anything but linear up until he attended Golden Knights Assessment and Selection in 2005. After college, he served as a trumpet player in the Ohio Army National Guard before joining the regular Army as a parachute rigger, where he packed parachutes for the U.S. Army Airborne School in Fort Benning, Georgia. Upon acceptance to the Golden Knights, Justin served 3 years on the demonstration team, traveling the country, jumping in front of crowds at sporting events and airshows. In 2008, he tried out and was accepted to the Golden Knights 8-way Formation Skydiving Competition Team, where he won 8 national championship titles, 4 world championships, 2 World Cups, and 1 World Air Games. In 2019, Justin retired from the competition team to take a position in the Golden Knights Parachute Maintenance Facility, where he currently serves as an FAA Master-Rated Parachute Rigger. The Army is hiring, and the U.S. Army Parachute Team is always on the lookout for potential qualified candidates. If you have what it takes and have the desire to make skydiving your full-time profession, Justin tells you what the requisite qualifications are and how to apply in this episode. For more information, go to www.goarmy.com/events/golden-knights/join. Again, that's www.goarmy.com/events/golden-knights/join. Biz, welcome to the podcast, buddy. It's great to finally have you here.
Yeah, man. What's going on, brother?
Not too much. I'd like to start off by having you tell us something about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you're currently doing.
Yep. So, obviously, my name's Justin Blewitt. A lot of you know me from the skydiving community and competition community with 8-way. Originally from Lime, Ohio. I was actually born in New York, in Olean, the real New York, up in the mountains, not the city. Sorry, all the New Yorkers out there. And then joined the Army in 1999 in the National Guard. Did that for 4 years, and then went active duty in 2004. A year later, made the Golden Knights. Did 3 years as a demonstrator, 10 years as a competitor on the 8-way team, and then I recently hung up my competition hat to take over the non-commissioned officer in charge of the parachute rigger loft for the entire Golden Knights organization. So it's been a good 2 years. I really enjoy it because I just feel like I'm able to give back to the team. I mean, that's kind of what I've always wanted to do. So yeah, there's the basics, I guess.
Is there anything that you miss most about the competition aspect since you've moved to the rigger loft?
Yeah, I miss the guys. I do. I miss the people. I don't miss the stress of it all. I feel like on a day-to-day basis, it was just constant stress to perform. At that level, you're really just chomping away at these little micro bits of trying to get better and better. When you get to a certain level, it just never stops, and your teammates are constantly putting that pressure on you on a day-to-day, which is a good thing. I think it helps anyone kind of grow as a person in my opinion. But and it gives you a new perspective on things because you with your teammates holding you accountable like that, it makes you hold yourself accountable in every other aspect of your life. At least it did for me. So I would look at things and say, well, hey, I might be wrong about this because I stepped into it with you and BK and Kurt Eisenbarger, all these guys with so much experience, so much competition experience, and you guys are really mentors, at least for me, again. And it was interesting to kind of sit there and watch you guys with all your experience and even between you guys kind of say, okay, well, all right, maybe I'm wrong here. Explain to me what you're thinking. And the explanation would come out and you guys would go, okay, all right, yeah, I'll try that. And then I applied that to kind of the rest of my life where I'm not always right, I'm not always wrong. There's always another way to do things. So basically to answer the question, though, I miss the people that I worked with. I don't miss everything else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I feel the same way, about the team, about you guys. I just had a conversation with Jesse Stoller just the other day about the same exact thing. I guess when he was in winter training recently, some of the new guys on the team, they've got some fresh ideas, but he's got, the way that we've done stuff for a while. And he was just asking me, I guess it was kind of getting to him, and he was asking me for my feedback on it. I said, hey, man, it's funny to hear you say this because this was the same situation we were in when Jesse first came to the team, and I told him there's no clear answer to it. There's a delicate balance because we've got all this institutional knowledge that we've built up and that we've figured out how things work to this point. But if you don't have that fresh perspective too, and you're not able to balance that, then it's really you're going to stagnate. You know what I mean? So it's a fine balance because you don't want to totally reinvent the wheel, but you do want to progress as well, and that's I think a challenge for any team. And the people that I see, like my mentors, they don't stagnate that way. Being with Kirk Werner on this team and BK as well. Again, they do a great job of continuing to learn. Like Kirk's flying with Mikhail, and Mikhail gives him some feedback, and Kirk's totally open to it. You know, tries to change. That's the mentality that we all try to go with.
Yeah, I like. We had a conversation kind of before this podcast about breaking the cycle mentally, and I think that's the hardest thing for everybody is to break that cycle when you get into a routine. How do you step out of that mental cycle and look at the other side, look at that fresh perspective? And fresh blood is sometimes the best way to do that from a team aspect, especially because you get these young kids that come in and it's very easy to fall into that trap as the older, more mature skydiver and go, yeah, I know the answer. And they're like, whoa, hold on. An old teammate of ours, Mike LaRoche, was really good at kind of doing that in a very mature way. And he'd step in and hold on, guys, hold on. And he'd just really kind of break things down in almost an unarguable way. And I think it pissed a lot of people off because we're all like, damn it, he's right. We know he's right.
Because he's so smart.
He's so smart. Yeah. We're like, just sit down. Just sit down, shut your mouth, put your hands in your pockets. Yes, we'll try that. But yeah, breaking that cycle is probably the hardest thing, I think, from a competition. No, I would say in general in life, it's just hard to get out of that, to break that cycle and learn something about yourself. You have to trust in other people at some point and say, I might be wrong. I might not have the answer. So.
Well, I bring you up all the time. I think you're one of the best people, or you take criticism the best way out of anybody that I've ever met. In debrief, you very, very rarely get defensive about it, and that's a super hard thing for most people to do, myself included, because you're trying to put your best foot forward, you're trying to do your best, and then when you fall short of that, when you're in the team training environment, it can get really frustrating. And when you get frustrated, then you start to close down a little bit, and you're not as open to that criticism. So you have to kind of, remove yourself emotionally, and you always seem to do that. Somebody would tell you something, I'd give you some feedback, and you'd be like, all right, I'll do it,
Well, I appreciate it. Mostly I was just eating and not paying attention. No, in all honesty, there were good days and bad days. We kind of grew up in two different regimes, but the same. You grew up Who was kind of the hard hitter when you started doing competition skydiving in 8-way?
As far as our competition or the guys on the team?
The guys on the team.
So I had Kerry Mills, Scott Rhodes, Charlie Brown.
Scott Rhodes, yeah. As far as I remember, and pardon me, Scott, if I offend you, but he was kind of a bit of a hard ass, yeah.
Yeah.
At times, but you need that especially as a young team, and BK kind of ruled with an iron fist early, but he was. I remember he was kind of doing a lot of babysitting too. At the time, I think he was babysitting these young guys, and he knew that we had potential. And at times, many helmets later, broken helmets, he I'm sure saw the light and was like, "Oh, these knuckleheads are finally starting to come around." But it was an interesting time, I think, for us to kind of come into it. Because none of us really knew what we were getting into. None of us on the team knew that we were going to do a decade of formation skydiving, let alone accomplish the things that we did. And I think that is a very hard thing to step away from, which is something kind of cool that I'd like to touch on, because it was very hard for me to step away. Jesse Stoller kind of touched on it when he stepped away to do VFS for a year or two, and and I had conversations with him, and he said, "Hey, if your heart's there, then do it." And for me, just a little backstory. I mean, you and I have known each other for a while. I grew up watching the Golden Knights. I probably watched you at an air show when I was being pushed around in a stroller. Not to date you, I know, but
I haven't been around that long. Come on.
I know. But no, my dad took me to the Dayton Air Show ever since I was a kid in a stroller, and I remember I didn't give a damn about the airplanes. I was like, I want to see the skydivers. So my dad would take me, all right, it's 12 o'clock, and he'd march me out to the the front line, and we'd watch the Golden Knights jump. So in a way, I've always felt like I've just kind of bled black and gold my entire life, and it seemed like a completely unobtainable goal at the time. So I kind of dipped my toe in the water and joined the Army and did the National Guard band of all things. So my parents were like, you have to go to college. I said, okay, I'll go to college, but I don't want to pay for it. So I'll let the Army do it, and I'll just play in the band. And from there, I made a skydive in college. Made my first jump in, I believe it would have been 2000 or 2001. And I had a really hard semester. I was failing some classes. I think the day I made my first skydive, I had probably just failed 3 tests. It was kind of like finals week, and I had cut out of the school newspaper, students skydive for $150, and I had it taped to my foot locker, if you will, in my dorm. And I remember getting back from that last test and just going, "Oh God, I'm failing out of college. This is happening." And I remember kind of opening my eyes, and it's staring me right in the face. And it was the day after my birthday, so I had some birthday money, because parents send their college kids birthday money, right? So I kind of looked at my wallet. I was like, 156. Yeah. Oh, I'm going skydiving. And I called the drop zone. I didn't know how it worked. And I said, hey, I want to do a jump. And I know I'm kind of going on the rabbit hole here, but
yeah, please do.
They, this is Skydive Xenia. Shout out to Skydive Xenia. And, this is where Kurt Eisenbarger started skydiving. So, called him up and said, hey, I want to do a tandem. I'm a Wright State University student, and I got this thing that says students can do a tandem for $150. They said, yeah. I said, do I need to make an appointment? They said, no, just come on out, because Skydive Xenia, you guys aren't that busy, unfortunately. So, I show up, and I think I was the only person there that day. Hopped on a, what was it? It wasn't a Cessna, but it's got the twin tail. Dang, help me out here. Older plane tail dragger.
195? Cessna 195?
No.
Twin tail.
Yeah, it'll come.
Oh, twin bow.
Twin bow.
I think twin bow's got a twin tail. Oh, Jen's on.
No. It'll come to me. So I make my first jump. My college girlfriend is there with me, and I landed, and it was kind of like my world opened up into this. It was kind of like a shift of attention. Hello, Jen. We might edit that out, maybe not. I don't know.
We'll probably leave it in now.
Oh no, leave it in for sure. But it was kind of like my focus shifted, and I spent another year in college after that, running my credit card bill as high as I could get it. Because back then on campus, if you signed up for a credit card, they would give you a free T-shirt, and I was like, well, I need clothes and I need credit cards. So I filled out like 3 or 4 applications, and about $15,000 in debt later, I had about 60 or 70 jumps. I just was racking up debt just to pay things off. And at that point, I called my father, God bless him, and said, Dad, hey, I need a check. I need some more money. I need you to bail me out. And my dad was gracious enough to say, look, I will write you one more check, but you need to have a life change in some way. You need to change something. He said, I don't care what it is. I don't care what you do, but you have to do something. It's okay. I'll call you back tomorrow. Call him back the next day. I said, Dad, I got a plan. I'm going to go active duty in the Army. I'm going to reclass to be an Army parachute rigger. And I'm going to try out for the Golden Knights. And if you lend me this money, I promise I will do this for you. And he said, show me some paperwork, and I'll send you a check. So I went and saw the recruiter that afternoon, got some paperwork drawn up, and sent it to my dad. I think I may have faxed it to him. As funny as that sounds now, I think I faxed it to him and said, Dad, hey, here's my contract. I got everything drawn up. He said, check's in the mail. I wish he could have Venmo'd it to me. It would have got me out of trouble a lot sooner. But yeah, he sent me a check and bought myself out of my apartment contract for that year and came home, spent like a month or two working for Menards, which is like a Lowe's up north for those who don't know Menards. And then went active duty, and then it was kind of all it was just a whirlwind of things that kind of went from there.
When you were working at Menards, was there ever a point in time where you were like, oh man, I may have, were you ever doubting yourself, may have made a bad decision?
Yes. Yes, there was a retired Army E5 sergeant, I think, that was working at Menards as one of my managers. He had retired. He was airborne. And I remember asking him, I was like, hey man, is Airborne School hard? He goes, yeah, you're going to do a lot of running. And I was like, okay, I need to start running. And back then, I mean, you had to kind of, well, not back then. I mean, at any point in time in your life, you just have to kind of step up and say, okay. So we had a...
Just a sidebar, though, for anybody
ahead.
That's out there that is thinking about going to Airborne School. There's running, but it's very slow. It's airborne shuffle style, which is just a pretty slow thing. But go ahead, sorry.
Don't stop jogging, people. Don't stop jogging. But yeah, so he kind of put the fear of God in me in a way, in a good way. But we had a reservoir that was about a mile from my house. It was giant. It was about 3.2 miles around the whole reservoir. It was beautiful. Actually, just recently took my wife Amanda there when we went to Ohio to kind of show her where I would train to get ready for her. Because in college I wasn't running. In the National Guard, the physical training, we were in the band. Enough said, right? So I had some work to do, and I would go out there and I would run, and I got to a point where I could run the whole thing. I'd run a third, and then I'd walk. Oh Jesus! And then I'd run a third, and then I could finally run the whole thing. Well, I got good enough where I would actually load up a backpack and I would start putting weight in it, and I slowly started doing these weighted runs around this reservoir. So by the time I went active duty and it was time to go through the rigger school and obviously Airborne School, it was just a breeze, and I was kind of ready to go. So that was kind of yes, I did have some doubts, but it was more about the training and what I was going to have to go through to accomplish my goal at the time, which was primarily being on the Golden Knights. I mean, I always wanted to serve my country, but that was the capacity in which I wanted to serve it. I mean, I've really just kind of bled black and gold since I was a kid, and since making the team, I think being an old teammate of mine, like I have that team mentality where like if I can do something for somebody, I'm going to do it, and if I can't, I'm going to find a way to do it if I can. So,
yeah, I mean, an example, Jen, is going out to jump with the girls this weekend, and it was really cool what you did to help her get her personal gear in line so she could make it out there to jump, and she really appreciates that, and I really appreciate it. Let's go back to your band experience a bit there. Do you find anything that actually helped you later on the team, or so maybe one of the things I'm thinking of is the underlying structure to music. There's an art and architectural side to it, and I think that's very similar to skydiving.
Yeah, it's it's a very cerebral thing to be a musician, and I don't necessarily claim to be anymore. I definitely was, in a good one in an earlier life. I think I've lost my chops, but yeah, the cerebral nature of it, I always found appealing. Just to kind of dive down a different avenue of my life. I was really into gymnastics as a kid, which is more of an individual sport, even though they function as a team. The event is individual. And playing the trumpet, which I did, the trumpet and the French horn and the National Guard band, I played different instruments. I was always kind of the star, and I always saw it that way. So it took a while for me until I stepped into a bigger pond, which would have been the Ohio Army National Guard band, where there were fish bigger than me, guys that have been playing for 40 years, and they were just crushing it on trumpet. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't play anything like that. That I realized that, you're not top dog anymore, and that there's still a lot to learn. And then, to translate that over to the skydiving side, I always felt like even though it was a team sport, you're acting as an individual within that formation, and it's part of that orchestra. Each formation was a particular bar or a particular phrase that you had to repeat over and over and over to get it really, really well, because a lot of band practice is repetition of small pieces of the whole song that you'll be playing or the whole set that you'll be playing. And that set being a competition, those 10 rounds, that's the whole thing. But each particular jump is just a page, and then each particular move is just a bar that you have to repeat over and over and over. And the more times that you do that, it translates into other songs that you would play. So a new piece of music comes out that you've never seen before. It looks unfamiliar, but the notes are a little bit the same as another song that you just played, or the melody is the same. It kind of translates into skydiving. I don't know if I'm going completely off base here, but
no, man, this is awesome.
That's kind of how I always saw it, where we were putting the pieces together so that when the competition came up, we would see one move to another, one block to another, random things that we've seen before. We were able to kind of wash those off our hands and say, okay, we already know how to do those. Let's focus on our problem pieces, which the problem pieces are the ones that the director, and on a skydiving team, everybody's kind of a part director as far as ideas are concerned, especially at that level. It's the director says, okay, everybody stop right there. I want to focus on that section. It's not quite right yet. And then you focus on that section. And I felt like as a team, especially as an 8-way team, we did a really good job of doing that, of saying, hey, these are blocks that are kicking our ass this year. Like, we need to focus on X, Y, and Z. And we broke them down, and every year they would change. Every year they were a little bit different. But yeah.
That is crazy. We're still in that experimental process with, it was always Block 8 that was giving us trouble, Block 12. Sorry to get too in the weeds for people that aren't formation skydivers, but, we had these certain aerial moves that were prescribed that you had to do a certain way, but you could have slightly different techniques on them that would make them more efficient. So, yeah, it's a constant process to make them more and more efficient, and we've gone back and forth. So recently I think we used to spin a certain of the twos or the bears. We used to spin those way back, and then we went to a different method, and we've come back to that spinning technique. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of a constant evolution. Sometimes you repeat yourself, but there's so many dynamics of different people that are involved, and So going back to the music, it definitely feels like, it sounds cheesy, but it definitely feels like when everything comes together. It sounds, when you're sitting listening to an orchestra, or you're at a great concert or something, you just get those chills. That's the way it feels like 2016, that competition, man, when everything was just, going great. We had some mistakes, but, for the most part, it was a solid competition. We got the highest average ever, and we ended up winning that world championships. And yeah, it's just, completely like music. But other times when you first start and throughout the whole process, it can just be frustrating and, why isn't this working? And then later on, it just all comes together and you're like, why weren't we doing that all along? And it's because of the process. But yeah.
No, it's interesting. You talk about mistakes, and I'm sure, again, you keep bringing up music, so I'm going to go back to that. But every musician during a concert might have a little glitch, and nobody in the audience knows. And that's the same thing with the competitions that we would have. Yeah, we would have a glitch here, a glitch there, and we'd beat ourselves up about it. But you can land from a good jump, and you end a good competition, and you're like, yeah, that was a rock concert. that was like we put on a performance and the people were pleased. And even I had a conversation with one of the guys from the French team at the time, and we had won a couple of competitions at that time, a couple of world meets. And I kind of walked up to him. I wasn't sure how to approach him. And I said, hey, I really, really, really respect you guys. I don't think you understand as a young skydiver, as a young competitor. I used to watch your videos over and over and over, trying to figure out where your magic was. And in his very French way, I love you French people. I do. I really do. But in his very French way, almost condescendingly, he looked at me and he goes, I study your videos now. And I remember he wasn't upset. It was very cordial. He was just saying, yeah, I know, I'm watching you now too. And that was kind of a turning point. I was like, oh my God, like these guys that I idolized, that we would break down the moves in these videos. And it kind of comes back to where we started our conversation about breaking the chain, breaking that mindset of things are constantly changing within the sport, within any sport or any discipline. The answer is never there. Nobody has it all. And at the time, the French had the answer. But we changed. We kind of we moved the bar a little bit. We just moved it. And they're like, okay, why are they beating us? Because I'll say it, every single one of those guys on that French team are far better skydivers individually than I will ever be. But as a team, we had something that was a smooth mentality. It was, and I'd like to bring up Craig Gerard too, one of your former guests, right? He was on.
Yeah, Craig and Eliana.
I remember we were in Eloy, I believe it was maybe my second or third, maybe fourth nationals, and I remember for some reason his four-way team had got thrown on the same airplane as us. And I remember the four-way was going to go out first at 10,500 feet, and we were going to go up to 12,500 feet. And I remember watching Craig Gerard in the back of the plane. I still had these first-round jitters, and my heart was pumping, and still kind of, oh, my God, I hate this. It sucks. Can't we just get past round one and get on with the competition? And I'm looking at Craig Gerard, and he has this goofy smile on his face with his eyes closed. And he's kind of doing this dirt dive. He is just having the time of his life. And I was like, that's the answer. Like, just enjoy yourself. Take the moment and just enjoy yourself. And if people would do that, not just in the sport of skydiving, but in general, if you just take a second during those stressful times in your life and go, what am I missing here? Where have I stepped astray? And that really changed me. So shout out to Craig G. I mean, I remember just looking at him and be like, he is as cool as a cucumber. Of course, he's been doing it.
I did the same thing. He had the same effect on me. And I was just talking to Mikhail and our podcast about it and asking his view on that because, it would be in a competition and I'd be sitting there dirt diving. I'd do the same thing. I'd look around. I'm like, I'm on the plane with Arizona airspeed. It's awesome. You kind of have that little fangirl moment and then you're like, all right, I got to refocus, get back into it.
Yeah, it's a neat dynamic.
Yeah, and it is cool, and it's something that I've heard about the sport quite a bit, and I've experienced myself, obviously, is that, you're in close proximity to the people at the highest echelons of it,
Yeah.
I mean, like the people that you admire most, you have access to them, and that's really cool, as opposed to, like, maybe the NBA or something like that where, you can't really approach, you're just too far separated from those people. Yeah. But I think because our sport's so fringe, you still have that interaction.
You're stuffed in a tuna can with one another, so, I mean, you just have no choice but to interact.
Yeah, the arena's definitely different for sure. Going back to the French, and I remember watching their videos over and over when we were in Baghdad in 2009, 2010.
Good times.
And I remember those were some really good times. And it was I can remember meeting up at one point because we were all kind of separated to different parts around Baghdad, different little sub bases, if you will.
Yeah.
And then when we all came together, it was kind of close to the end. I think maybe we did it once in the middle and then once toward the end we were getting ready to go back home. But I remember walking the skydives, and this is awesome. And I think we had to calm ourselves down a little bit because I remember sharing that, one of those French videos. And, we were all fired up and wanting to go fast. And we were like, all right, we got to back this down. eventually, just make a mental note here, I would like to get to how we arrived at being more smooth and being more efficient, which I think was actually our strength. It wasn't any one like aha and lightning moment. It was a process of getting there. But before we talk about that, I want to, since we're talking about being in Baghdad, I want you to tell us about your experience there.
Oh, gosh, which experience?
Just, kind of any highlights that you can think of.
I can. I have to be delicate if I'm going to tell this story. And, so I had a blast. I really did. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Just a little background story, especially for military guys or anybody who's not military who's listening. The Golden Knights, got sent over to Baghdad kind of to relieve soldiers throughout the holidays. Now, Golden Knights are not typically battle ready as far as combat, so they put us in support roles to support the support who were working 24-hour shifts. Some of these soldiers were over there working 24-hour shifts. They had cots in their office, and we were able to break those days up for them where we would work 12 and they would work 12. So it was really a great program. It was a great thing that the Army decided to do. And, so I ended up I was basically not air traffic control, but I monitored the flight activity of things being transported, troops and supplies being transported throughout Baghdad and in and out of Kuwait. And it was basically like a little tracking system that I had on this computer, and it was kind of like Facebook Messenger. The airplanes could say, hey, we're taking off, and it would let me know. And then I could say, if there were troops that had to defend an area, I could say, hey, these guys are running 30 minutes behind. Just kind of keep track of everything. So just to give everybody kind of a background of what I was doing. And I worked from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So there were some grueling hours. It was kind of a blur of time. And one of our teammates, Josh Coleman, he worked during the day, and he loves to shoot guns. So it was great because right behind where we would stay, they had a shooting range, and every day they would test the weapons to make sure they all worked, from 9mm all the way up to a 50 cal. And Josh was out there every morning just laying waste with all these guns. He's like, bro, man, we were out there shooting all day. Oh, it was great, man. I was like, yeah, I know. I was trying to sleep. Remember, I worked from 7 to 7 in the morning. So that was pretty memorable. And living with that cat, oh, Jesus, he's special. But back to him. So a package came in. I have to be very delicate with this story. A package comes in. God, I hope I can tell a story. Yeah, I can. Package comes in on one of these aircraft, and it wasn't on a manifest. And I had access to all the manifest. Everything that was on every aircraft that moved all throughout the country, I knew where it was going. I knew it was on that plane. Somebody had made a little backdoor deal with another buddy of his. They're higher-ranking officials. God, I hope we don't get anybody in trouble. And somebody walked up to the air crew and said, hey, I need you to take this box and take it over to where I was working. Not specifically, but I don't want to say where I was working, but they said, take it over to where this building is, which happened to be where I was working. So the box gets unloaded from the aircraft, and the guys that were supposed to pick it up didn't show. They were late, like they typically are. So this box gets delivered. Nobody knows who it goes to because it doesn't have a name on it. The air crew's just like, hey, this is going over to this place. Just take it. And they're like, all right. And they unload it, and the air crew's got other missions, so they fly off. They don't give a crap where this thing's going. So the box ends up in my building by our first sergeant's desk, unbeknownst to me. So I get a phone call from some guy who doesn't really introduce himself. And he's just like, hey, is this base whatever? I said, yeah, it is. He goes, hey, we had a box come in on this shipment or on this flight, and it's full of parts. They're worth like $750,000 or something. And I was like, dude, there's no box on that flight. And the guy's like, I'm telling you, the box is on that flight. And I'm like, I'm looking at the manifest right here. I'm telling you, Joe Snuffy, Joe Blow, like the dude, there's no box on this flight. I'm telling you right now, I'm looking at it. And he goes, so you're at base such and such, right? I said, yeah. And he goes, I'm on my way over. And I said, good luck. Click. And I hung up on him. Now, just to remind the listeners here, to get from the airport or wherever this guy was to where I was working, you had to go through about 4 different security checkpoints. So I'm like, this dude ain't coming over here. Good luck. You got to have like 6 different badges to get here, whatever. About 30, 40 minutes later, I don't know, I'm watching like Sons of Anarchy. I'm like, I'm just geeking out. Flights aren't really going out. Nothing's going on. And these 2 big bearded dudes knock on my door. Hey, you Sergeant Blewitt? And I was like, kind of wanted to peel my name tape off. Like, no. And I'm like, yeah, I'm Sergeant Blewitt. He's like, yeah, I called about that box. It's got those parts in it. And I was like, oh, you guys made it over here. It's good to see you guys. So now I've changed my tone because I don't want to get in an argument with these cats. So they check my vehicle. They check all of our supply closets, everything. They can't find this box. So I throw my teammate under the bus who had been shooting guns coincidentally all day long and waking me up. So it's like 3 a.m. He's dead asleep. I'm like, who could probably help you is the guy who unloaded the plane. He's right down the hill down there. His name's Sergeant Coleman. Just knock on that door, wake him up, and he'll be able to tell you where that box is. So they go down, they ask him. He didn't even know. So about 2 weeks later, the box gets found. The first sergeant comes back from some mission, and he's like, what is this box? And they crack it open, and it's a box full of cash.
Oh, jeez.
And he was like, oh, I know where this goes. And we're like, yeah, that would have been useful information, like, I don't know, a week ago. Welcome back to the party. So, yeah, that was good times in Baghdad.
Hopefully they weren't under any timeline where they needed that stuff right away.
I hope not. I hope not.
So moving forward a bit to what we were talking about as far as our approach to being successful with the 8-way team, and it was our styles were a little bit different. I think the one thing after watching that French video over and over and over was that we noticed that they were very very fast-looking flyers. Like they had a lot of movement, which looks fast, but when it and I've had some conversations with the French coaches as well, and I think they've changed their style once they noticed that it was working for us for a while. But they were, they looked very fast, and with us, I think we noticed that when the numbers don't lie, what gets measured gets managed, and when we put a clock to it, started figuring some things out. And I was always kind of the mentality that smoothness leads to efficiency, and efficiency is going to yield higher scores, right? So we eventually came to that. And I remember we had an aha moment kind of where we realized that was the case, but I think it happened over time. Can you elaborate on that process at all?
Yeah, I don't remember any one particular moment, like you said, like an aha moment. I remember we talked a lot about the noise within the formation, which was always kind of a neat concept to me. And I love having these conversations because I like kind of stepping away too from competition skydiving and stepping into everything in your life. It was having that aha moment or lack thereof and finding that smoothness rather than that noisy formation. It calmed everything down in the formation, and I think it calmed us down as a team, as a whole. Everybody had this almost, we'll call it, I'm going to kick it Craig G's way again. Everybody had this Craig G look in their face. Everybody was just like, just
supremely confident.
Get it. Nice and smooth. Just keep on moving and just go. I mean, anybody who's talked to Craig Girard knows kind of his speech pattern, the way that he talks. And I think the way that we flew very much reflects what's going on inside that dude's brain, which is a dangerous place. But that's, I think we all eventually found that. And I think I can kind of pinpoint it. I think it's when certain people on the team either left the team and we kind of started to find our own team, is when things started to slow down and smooth out a little bit, because there were the old competition skydiving mentality was go, drop the knee as deep and as hard as you can.
Yeah, throttles forward type mentality. Yeah.
And a good kind of parallel to that was when we were in Dubai in 2015. We had a week for the World Air Games. We had a week where we didn't have anything going on, and we went and drove go-karts and really had a good time, just kind of bonded as a team. And I remember being on the go-kart circuit, and I came in first physically, I was ahead of everybody, and I distinctly remember coming in first. But then come to find out, I don't follow racing. I don't follow NASCAR. I watch Formula One because I just love the Formula One and definitely Le Mans. But it's not about who actually comes in first. It's about time. And when I think it was Jesse Stoller. Do you remember? I think Jesse Stoller ended up taking first time-wise. It was one of the young cats. I remember being pissed because the times came out and his times were better than mine. So kind of the way that it translates into skydiving is, if you drive reckless, it doesn't mean that you're going to come in first. But if you drive smooth, your times are going to be better than everybody else's. So that's kind of how I looked at it. But I remember looking at Jesse like, I was first. I know it. But no, he got to pop the champagne and do his thing. But yeah, I think, that's when it really kind of solidified itself with me. I mean, we were already kind of there and running things smoothly, but I remember, everything kind of leading up to that. I was like, okay, well, this really makes sense. It's the time, not the effort that you put forward. Plus, I'm a lazy skydiver anyway, so the smoother that we flew, the less I had to work, which was fantastic for me.
I remember Vern Miller, one of my teammates and mentors back in the late 90s. He had a similar mentality. He was like, it was like it's too much work. You don't have to do that much work, man. You just you be more efficient, be more smooth, and it works out. And he's completely right. Going back to Le Mans, I don't know if you remember, but I remember being kind of attached to this movie, this documentary called Le Mans Truth in 24.
Yep.
And it was this great documentary about Le Mans and the Audi team. And I still continue to watch that every so often because I think it's such a great story of triumph, but it shows the whole journey, from inception or trying to carry on a legacy, and then your chapter of the inception and then the whole process throughout that. And I think it just does a really great job of getting in the weeds and telling the story in detail of what it's like for any competition team to go from point A to point B, all the way at the top. And I was just wondering if you remembered that, because I remember sharing that with you. I was like, you got to watch this, man. I think, because we were peace partners, we used to room together a lot wherever we went. And I think I'd force you to watch it. But
yeah, I remember that like it was yesterday. I'm a huge movie buff. It's kind of what got me into skydiving in the first place. But yeah, I remember you recommending that, and kind of one of the scenes that, when a friend recommends a movie or a documentary, you always want to divulge kind of like one of the cherries from said documentary or movie, because you want to hook them in, right? You want them to be as interested or as invested as you are, because you're like super excited about, dude, you got to watch this, man. Let me tell you a story. I don't want to ruin it for you. Everybody does that. And you try and give them that little cherry or that little Easter egg that's hidden in there. And I remember you talking about that. And the part I couldn't wait for was when the guy broke down what would have been a skydive for us was a lapper on the track for him.
Yep.
And he's like, and I'm going into turn 4 here. I'm going to lay on the brakes and a little bit up, and I'm going to shift down to third gear, and then I'm going to accelerate out of turn 2, and then full throttle here, and then we're going to move into turn 5, and he
going
just
the second chicane, the third chicane. Yeah.
It was just this guy was just popping off, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on in his brain that seems so fast when he was saying it in that documentary, which is just right over my head, and you can just barely follow it in the documentary. Must be what most people feel like when they first start competitive skydiving. They're like, what in the hell have I got myself into?
What language is that dude speaking right now? Yeah.
It's so
The Great
fast.
Dane was the guy he was the driver. The Danish driver, yeah.
Yeah, no, that was a fantastic documentary. But yeah, your ability to kind of slow things down is interesting in how that develops. But no, that was a fantastic documentary. I remember that like it was yesterday.
Yeah, so it's still out there. It's kind of hard to find a little bit, but if anybody wants to dig around, I definitely recommend watching that one.
Absolutely.
What was the movie that got you into skydiving?
Oh God, I'm embarrassed to even say this. Drop Zone. That was with Wesley Snipes, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, something about the music, something about the story. I was very, very young when it came out. I think I saw it when it first came out. I've always been a big movie buff. It wasn't necessarily movies that got me into. Movies got me into skydiving, but movies got me into doing the things that I did as a child, the gymnastics and things like that. I remember watching. I don't know if it was. I think it was the original Mad Max movie. And if anybody knows the Mad Max movie, there's that little dirty grunt kid that's living in the desert, and he does a backflip and goes and hides in his hole. And at that point, I had to learn how to do a backflip. Oh. And then every time I saw somebody do a high fall off a building or something, that was what I wanted to do. And then, as I got older, then Drop Zone came out, and I was like, oh, my God, a skydiving movie. No, hindsight being what it is now, it's one of the worst skydiving movies of all time. I'm like, dude, she doesn't even have a main hooked up. She's going to die. But, and being...
Hopefully Guy Manos isn't listening to this.
I don't know. I'm sorry, Guy. But yeah, no, it was terrible, but it was beautiful in its own right. And it did its job for young Blewitt here. But yeah, I actually, and I don't know if I've even talked to you about this, but before I went active duty in 2004 and I spent a couple of months at home working at Menards, I had actually applied for a stunt position down at Disney in Florida. I sent him a headshot, sent him like a little small audition tape, and I got accepted to go play young John Connor in Terminator 2 3D at the time.
Wow, I didn't know that.
A lot of people don't know, John Connor, and it's old. Oh, camera.
There's no more video.
No more video. No, damn. I want to.
Did you get a new SD card?
No. You're good. No, but yeah. So I got that. I got that audition. They wanted me to come down, and they wanted to check me out. Back then, I still had a lot more hair than I do now, so they'd be extremely disappointed. But and what was funny was a couple of years before that, our parents had taken us to I think it was Universal Studios where the Terminator 2 3D was, and I watched it and I was like, oh my God, that's so awesome! And this little kid, John Connor's getting launched off platforms and stuff. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. So I always kind of had that adventurous mentality, but it obviously didn't happen. I ended up joining the Army full time. It was already kind of too late at that point. It was kind of like my last ditch hope because I'd already promised my father that I was going to go active. So at this point, I'm kind of committed, but I'm like, oh man, if I can weasel my way into the stunt world, which, I hate to say weasel because Tom Baker, totally jealous of that guy. Listen to his stories and get to kind of play in movies, and so jealous of you getting to work with some of my favorite directors. But
I was going to say that I felt bad sometimes, but at the same time, you're my peace partner, one of my closest friends. I couldn't help but call you up and say, hey man, I was just on this commercial with Peter Berg.
Oh my God, I was so upset. That and between that and Transformers, I was so upset. Now I don't want to be a movie star, but I always wanted to like play some kind of role, be a driver. My kind of dream at the time, which got me into skydiving, at least that adventurous bug, I guess, was doing high fall stunts. That was something I was dead set on doing. I mean, I wanted to be the high fall guy that they were like, call that dude, we can throw him off anything, and he'll say yes. And I just cardboard boxes, I'll do it. So
when we were out in Dubai, did you go off that? They had a high fall thing out there. Did you do that?
I did. BK was upset about that.
I do remember that.
Yeah, our former team leader. For those of you listening of the 8-way team, Brian Krause. I would actually wake up early, go to the drop zone before you guys would leave the hotel, and I would jump off of it for about 30 minutes, just
really?
Over and over and over. And then y'all would show up, and I'm sweating. Everyone's like, "You doing here?" I was like, "Yeah, I just went for a run." But no, that was fun. That was a good time. Those bags, by the way, for those of you wanting to be stuntmen, jumping the bags are a lot harder when you hit than you think. You need to hit them properly. So.
Just right.
Oh, yeah.
Dubai, man, that was crazy. In 2012, I remember they had that. They had the, what do they call it, the Hydro board.
Was that 2012 or 15?
That was 2012 when we were out there. That was for the World Championships. They had it lined up. Right on the side there, they had a whole bunch. It was almost like a carnival atmosphere. Yeah. They had that. They had the Hydro board. They had like a number of activities to do as you're walking to the drop zone, the landing area, and it was just everything was so over the top. They had this huge stage that they built, and do you remember when we first walked on there? They were still building the stage, but they had that crane. It's like a couple of cranes that were set up like a slingshot.
Oh yeah,
and
it's
they
a
had
launch.
They had a base jumper that launched out of this slingshot. Man, it was just absolutely incredible. What do you remember about that whole experience?
I remember thinking Dubai. You guys have too much money, for starters. I remember walking to the drop zone one day and they had a brand new Mercedes. I'm a big car guy. I love cars. And this dude is out there with a permanent Sharpie, drawing on a Mercedes, drawing like not graffiti, kind of like tribal artwork on this Mercedes. And I just wanted to gouge my eyes out. I was like, come on, bro. Too much money is too much money. At some point, I don't know. No bag on Dubai. Good job, y'all found it. but Jesus, guys. I mean, I remember the guy pulling up and he had a cheetah in his dang truck.
I was just getting ready to talk about that. Yeah, I remember Jen, she was like, hey, Matt, there's one of the guys in the 8-way team, he has a cheetah in his truck that we just went and petted, and I was like, all right, bring me over there. But
Yeah.
that must be a good pickup line, for.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you want to hang out with my cheetah? Oh, yeah, I have a cheetah. Well, and back to the whole finances, the whole thing, I remember kind of asking the guy, I was like, hey, man, so, I know you feed it me, but, like, how much does this thing eat? And he goes, about $25,000 a month.
Jeez.
And I was like, no, I wanted to know, like, the details of the meat and the sizes. Do you feed a chicken or steak? But, okay, I'll take it in dinar or whatever they – what's their – I don't want to be wrong about that. What's their what do they have over there? Is it – no, it's not dinar, is it?
No.
Ruble? No, that's Russia.
That's Russia. Yeah.
Dang,
We're showing our ignorance here.
Yeah,
I can't I'm drawing a blank on that right now.
I'm sorry. UAE, I love you guys. You have a beautiful time. I had a beautiful time over there, but good Lord, $25,000 to feed your cat? Come on now.
Yeah, it was a different experience for sure, but it was really cool, and it's I guess I'm not sure exactly what happened, so if nobody take this the wrong way or get too upset with me if I get it wrong, but I think the prince was super into skydiving at the time, so I think that's why they were able to build up a lot of that infrastructure and have a great drop zone there. And then going on from there, I think something happened to where he had to kind of move up to be groomed as the next in line kind of deal. And I think so he's not skydiving as much or at all anymore. So things have kind of changed on that front. But do you have anything else? What was your favorite competition experience?
My favorite competition experience. Oh man, I kind of thought that would come up. We've had so many. You would think that your first world championship would probably be your favorite. I honestly think it was our first. No, it was our second nationals, 2010, in Skydive Chicago. I think it was a step in a new direction for a team who hasn't won in a long time, and we had a team that had some longevity, so we knew we had a long way to go. But I think we all had the confidence to know that it was going to take us somewhere. We didn't know how far it was going to take us. So I would say probably my favorite was 2010. And I have to kind of give a small shout out to my dad. I remember I called my father first. And I remember shedding a tear, telling him, I said, Dad, we've just won the national championships. And that was like the biggest thing for me. And then I would say near second to that would have to be my last competition, only because I knew it was an end of something special. I always saw our team as just something special, and I'm sure everybody who's been part of a skydiving team or any team in general that they've had to walk away from, that they've felt that special connection to the people that they're with, the people that helped them get there, all the conversations that you've had, all the laughs that you've had, all the soul jars filled. There's just like, there's so many things along the way that you just can't put too fine a point on. That last competition was the best because it was the little things. Myself and Josh Coleman, we would land, and every time, and we were counting the jumps down, we'd land after jump 5, and we'd go 5 left, and then we'd land after the next jump 4 left, and it was, it's the little things like that I miss. It kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier about missing things, and it's the little things like that I really miss. But yeah, I would say first is definitely that first national championship. Really kind of holds a place in my heart, and then my last world championship, the one in 2012. Not to kind of get too wrapped around the axle about winning championships, but the one in 2012 was definitely a tingler. Kind of touched me in my special place a little bit. But it was, I realized at the time, I think it was right around the time that we had come together as a team, and that it wasn't about me. It was no longer about I want to go win a world championship. It was about we won this world championship. We put in the time, we put in the jumps, the blood and the sweat and the tears to get where we're at now. And that's when I think as a team, I really felt like I was part of something greater than myself. So I have to put a note out there, especially for BK, Brian Krause. I mean, putting together a team like that and putting together a project like that is just got to be so overwhelming. And the fact that he did it so close to retirement, from retiring from the Army, is just amazing to me that he had the patience to do it. And like I said before, he broke many helmets getting there, but he really put his head down, and that has not gone to the wayside. So.
Yeah, what you're talking about, it takes me back to that saying, the prize is in the process, and it truly is. In the beginning, when you haven't won a championship of any kind, you're focused on that medal. You're like, I want to wear that medal. I want to stand on that podium, and that's still a goal. But the reasons behind it definitely change, and it does definitely become more about the process because you value that process. You realize that the competition experience at the tip of the iceberg, it really is just kind of a flash in the pan, and it's the culmination of that whole ride.
Yeah.
We talked about different teams a little bit, and, I think it is true what you say that, each experience is special and you feel a special connection with those people. But in my experience, being on many successful teams and many teams, or not many teams, it was all the same. It was the Golden Knights primarily for my whole career, but there were different personality dynamics on those teams. So people would come and go throughout that time. So you'd have a different dynamic every so often. It started out being every 2 years because a couple people would have to leave before we got permanent slots on the team, which would allow people to stay on the team for entire careers, to be able to get up to the world-class level. That really started helping us. So we started seeing the timeline of attrition being stretched out a bit more.
Yeah.
So you can kind of gauge it in 5 to 10 year increments. And I do remember there were some times on the team where we didn't have that special connection. We were at each other's throats, and it just wasn't a good dynamic. And I remember going back to what I'm getting to is going back to 2012, and the experience that I had with it is it was super special for me because on some of the teams that weren't so great and didn't gel, I played a big part in an unsuccessful period on the Golden Knights. So for me, getting back to that, once I get back on the team, I told myself that, okay, it's not about me anymore. It's about dedicating myself to this team and trying to invest myself fully in this program to help, build it up to that level. So when we got to that point, I think that was my favorite one because it was a rebound for me personally, and it was, okay, I'm doing this for the right reasons now. It's not about me.
Yep.
It's about the whole team, and it was really cool for me too because I got to see you guys go from hardly any experience and us being all over the sky to just, being the best team in the world, and it was.
So would you say that's your favorite competition?
That's the one that sticks out in my mind the most, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I think and that's when you ask me, that's a tough question. I had to pick 2010 because losing in 2009, I didn't see the work that the competition team had to put in to just get to a competition every year. And having put my heart and soul kind of into the 8-way team and then going in 2009 and losing, I was like, well, this sucks. Like, why do you guys even do this? Let's just hang the hats up and, go back and be demonstrators. This is ridiculous. And then I think that loss, and I really have to give a lot of respect to the old guard airspeed team. Those guys kind of coming into our trailer because I'm not going to lie, we were young back then too, and young-minded especially, where these guys would come into the trailer and they're like, hey, guys, your Jack Jeffries and your Dan BCs, and those guys would come in and they're like, you guys have got something. That you did this in a year is incredible. We're not going to see this again. This is something special. And they would leave.
That was a super special experience, man.
Dude, it touched me in a way that I can only reflect on now, I think, because at the time I was like, these guys, I don't trust you. You're going to come back next year with just, but the sincerity from the airspeed team and their respect for the competition mindset has always really impressed me, and it's always had my respect. And those guys go down in a whole nother book that I wish I could have been a part of. But they've contributed so much to individuals in the sport that it is virally spread to the whole sport. Everything that they touch turns into gold, whether it be a person that they talk to or a team that they coach, or just an impression that they leave on somebody. And yeah, that's why I think 2010 was really kind of like, okay, maybe I should just recalibrate how I'm looking at things, and maybe it's just this angry, I want to beat you mindset is not where it's at. It's got to be somewhere else, and these guys have obviously figured it out. But yeah, that's kind of how I ended up there.
For seasoned competitors, like you said, you didn't realize how valuable what they were saying was at the time. I think I had some more experience at that time, so I knew this was a super special thing that these guys, Dan BC, Jack Jeffries, all the guys from the 8-way team, they were coming in, and it was a way of them kind of passing the torch almost. If anything, for people that aren't skydivers, it reminds me of a scene in The Rundown where Arnold Schwarzenegger walks past The Rock, and they kind of give this little nod, and then that was the beginning of The Rock taking over the action genre of the movie industry. It's kind of what it felt like to me at that time, just a passing of the torch. There's an unspoken respect that happens amongst seasoned competitors, for the other team, because that these guys are putting in the same work. It's like the French, I think, the longer, in the beginning of my career, it's like, I want to beat these guys, but later on, gotten to know them, gotten to become, great friends with them, and, there's that mutual respect that goes on, I think, because you guys are putting in the same work, you've been through the same battles, you've made the same sacrifices, you've experienced the same victories, the same highs, the same lows.
Doesn't mean you're going to share the secrets. But you definitely, but it takes time to get there.
Yeah,
it takes time. It takes loss. I hope by some stretch especially the new Golden Knights 8-way team hears all of these podcasts. I mean, there's so much great content here, but a loss is not necessarily a bad thing. And I think the loss in 2009 and the loss at the World Meet in 2010 were probably two of the defining moments in my competition skydiving career, because it really set that wheel in motion of, okay, I'm not going to stop until I see some results. And then those results eventually started to come, and then we started to exceed those results, and then we wanted to, but those losses taught me to push beyond what the one goal was. Let's just go and win. That wasn't the name of the game. Every competition, it was something else. How can we beat ourselves? Which, if you apply that to your life, in my opinion, you'll always be a winner.
Yeah. I couldn't say it any better. Going back to the unspoken language, you and I had a great unspoken language that I haven't gotten to the level with any other peace partner yet. I think
took 10 years.
Nick Hemlin and I are getting there, but it definitely. You and I, but we had a different dynamic too, and it was great because it took 10 years, but you kind of see it happening at different points. Like, we didn't even have to, if there was something a little wrong in the formation, whether it was in the prep or in the sky itself, just a little bit of pressure and a grip, or just a look, we could almost read each other's minds at that point. It was such a great thing because we hardly had to say anything, but
That's so cool.
Yeah, it worked out.
Nick's a different character, man. I love that guy. I'll tell you what, but I don't know if I could be his peace partner. He's got that look. If I pissed him off, Nick. He'd scare the crap out of me.
He's a great competitor, and he's one of the guys that reminds me most of Scott Rhodes. There was after the World Cup last year. Last year was kind of a tough year for Arizona Airspeed 4-way team. They lost a team member, and then they brought me on short notice 3 months ago before Nationals. lost the Nationals by 1 point, and then we went to the World Cup, and we won the World Cup by 18 points. And I remember the very last jump, it had sorry again for getting in the weeds for people that aren't skydivers, but it had a 5 in it, or like an opal.
Yep.
And I flubbed a grip at one point in the jump, and I think he knew we were going to get busted for it. So, we knew we won this competition by a large margin. And I remember the first thing he said to me was like, "What was up with that grip? Why'd you mess up that grip, man?"
Oh, I'd have just curled up in the fetal position and been like, "I'm sorry, Nick. I'm sorry."
I was like, "Hey, I'm trying my best, man." And at the time, I got it, inside I was a little defensive about it, I think. And then I was like, "But that's what makes Nick great." You know what I mean? That's what makes those kind of competitors great, is because they don't accept, we won, but we didn't win like we should have. You missed this one grip, and it wasn't the perfection that that he has his standards raised to all the time.
Oh yeah, he's a scary guy. sorry, man, if you're listening.
Let's go quite a ways back. I want to talk a bit more about your gymnastics experience, and if there was anything that you learned from that you applied to your jumping later on whether it was a demonstration team or on the competition team. And I just wanted to say thanks, for teaching me a couple things. You tried to teach me handstands and handstand walks, which I still can't do very well without a wall. But the muscle up too, and I use those all the time in my training. Just used one yesterday. I really appreciate that, man. You showed me that it wasn't all about just trying to muscle through stuff, which is kind of my mentality at the time. It's more about technique and breaking things down into manageable steps.
Yeah, and you've always been kind of a physically intimidating man. The things that you're always working out, and I think as far as gymnastics, to kind of get back to that, my dad was a YMCA director my entire life. He was director before I was born in Olean, New York, Tiffin, Ohio, then up to Ann Arbor, Michigan, then Ann Arbor, Michigan to Tiffin, and then he's always been involved in that, which involved me a lot in sports. I mean, he made me play everything, T-ball, fast pitch, to soccer and football. I mean, I had to play it all, and I didn't like any of it. I really, as a child, did not like physical contact. With this whole COVID thing, this is kind of been hermit's wet dream. This is great. They're like, social distancing, got it. But I didn't like the physical contact. So then I found gymnastics in movies and watching the physicality of some of the things they were doing in movies. And I'm like, oh my God, like these guys, like if I can do a backflip, then I can do this. If I can do that, I can do this. And it was very like a lean strength. I was never into lifting and things like that. You were pretty big, I think, when we started the 8-Way project. You were big into lifting and actually started to thin out, I believe. A more lean workout approach. Yeah,
I'd gone through a kind of a change of a paradigm shift in my training. I think it went more to CrossFit, more to functional type fitness, and away from the classic isolation body or
lifting.
Bodybuilding type stuff.
Yeah, and I think the gymnastics just it was a way for me to. Honestly, if the easiest way to put this was, it was an easy way for me to throw myself through the air into a foam pit with zero restrictions, and I could learn how to do flips. And I was always exposed to swimming and pools, and every YMCA my dad ever ran had a pool with a high dive, and I was constantly belly flopping and smacking myself into the water in any way possible, just to kind of get that rush, that high of some kind of adventure, and learn something new and how to contort my body. And then, skydiving really just came later, through movies and watching. And that whole process we talked about earlier, it just kind of segued nicely into, fortunately, a career where I was structured enough, because I was an extremely unstructured child, not by any fault of my parents, but myself. I mean, I was constantly getting myself in trouble, constantly hurting myself, trying to do different stunts and sling myself down, off tree houses and things like that. But I think the gymnastics was, at that age, was just a step off to something greater, which turned into be skydiving. And skydiving was as free as I had ever been. that first jump, and I'm sure everybody remembers their first jump, the canopy ride and how quiet it was. And those sometimes were my favorite days at work, when you'd have those semi-cloudy days, those big poofy clouds, and you could jump above them and fly around them with your parachute. And it was kind of my gymnastics at the time, because I would work with a team that I loved. I loved working with the people that I worked with, and I had a moment alone. I had a moment alone under canopy where I could kind of look around and just take in something for myself. And I think I still hold on to a little bit of that individuality from gymnastics, but that's where I was able to apply it in skydiving. So,
do you think it helped give you any extra level of kinesthetic awareness? It seemed like I remember I got a membership at the time. At one point, I started to learn to free fly, and I still am not that good at it, and I need to get back to it. But you did it, and it seemed like you almost had a hack to it. You did it in this abbreviated period of time before you got very fluent in it.
Yeah, it definitely, body awareness in gymnastics is definitely a thing. I mean, just knowing, I've talked, I think, multiple times now about just being able to do a backflip and how people are so scared of it, and it's your situational awareness when you're kind of throwing yourself through the air like that. You just have to know. You got to know where the ground is. You got to know where your boundaries are. If I jump too high, am I going to hit the ceiling? Is this a conducive environment for what I'm doing? And I think a cool thing for me too is skydiving took all those boundaries away, because there are no walls. There's the earth and it's coming, but you
get a little bit of time before it gets there.
Yeah, you got a little time before it gets there, but yeah.
I also wanted to throw a shout out to Papa Bizz, since we were talking about him. He's been a great supporter of the team, and really appreciate that. And I remember when we did a jump into the World War II memorial up in his neck of the woods, went over to his place. But I really thought it was cool that he was very from a distance, but he would be very supportive whenever we were, sometimes he'd come to the competitions or training camp if he was traveling close by. But I just wanted to throw him a shout out.
He can pull ground with the best of them. I think he's pulled ground at maybe the Cleveland Air Show or something. I think Trey Martin was pulling ground one day. I don't know why. And my dad was there, and Trey didn't know what he was doing. And my dad had been around the team at probably 10 years at that point. And my dad said, I got this. And he went and talked to the air boss about the music and the microphone. And Trey was like, oh, my God, thank you so much. And then coincidentally, my dad went and got the Gov van stuck in a mud pit. So that was awesome.
Well, that's nothing worse than any of us have done on the team at some point in time. So with Papa Bizz there, and talking about how helpful he was, and remembering the experiences with it, just leads me to the question: was there a point in time that you can remember after, because he the whole experience with you getting into the Army? Was there a point in time where you realized he was proud of you? Yeah.
I think. I've always been seeking his approval, not for any reason. I can't claim to have any kind of damaged childhood relationship with my parents.
It's the same thing with my dad.
Yeah. They're separated. It probably affected me minimally, but it didn't harbor any kind of anger. I think my father and I have always bumped heads, I'm sure, as most sons do with their fathers. But I remember him hating the thought of me skydiving when I first started skydiving. But a lot of that was based on the fact that I was supposed to be in class. And when I was supposed to be in class, and I'd tell my dad, oh, yeah, I went skydiving all weekend. He's like, well, how are you paying for that, son? And I'm like, I got a shiny new credit card last week. I got this. And then later to have him bail me out of it all. But he hated the fact that I was skydiving. It was a dead end. It wasn't something, and it's that mentality kind of from that time frame to his era. It was you had to go to college to succeed, and that is seemingly not as true as it used to be. It is helpful, very, very helpful if you have a specific career path that you're looking for. But there's so many things out there that can make you successful in your own right. And success to me has always been just being happy where I'm at, being able to support myself. And I found that, and I'm good. I'm there. I'm where I want to be. There's things that I still want to do, I still want to push myself and find other things. And I think the moment my father was most proud was the first time he saw me in Yuma. When I made the team, he came out for winter training, and he saw me, and he was like, holy crap, from air show to this. Like, I used to just take him to Dayton every year, and now I'm here in Yuma, Arizona, watching this kid do what he wanted to do from the get-go. And I remember the kind of the defining moment. A lot of people don't. People talk about how you don't have the exact memory of what you had back in the day, but in my mind, I'll tell this story my way. I remember wanting to see the skydivers at one of the air shows he took us one year, and there was a skydiving booth in Dayton, I don't know, and they had a big boob television set up, one of those big bowl televisions, and they had just had skydiving videos playing on it, and I remember just standing there wide-eyed as all can be, and I'm like, oh my God, I just want to do this. And then when I watched the Golden Ice jump, I remember looking at my dad and I'm like, Dad, I want to do that one day. I want to be a Golden Knight. And he kind of did you can be whatever you want, son. Petted me on the head like,
sure, you can be an astronaut.
yeah. You're next president there, sir. But it was, I mean,
I didn't mean to compare being a Golden Knight to an astronaut because it's so far removed, but that's what it feels like.
That's exactly what it was. But and not to take anything away from my father. He was supportive as a father can be with a nutcase child like myself when it was all kind of happening. But I understand his frustration. But enough about my dad. Love you, Pop.
He had a really cool train set, too, when we were up there. I remember that.
Oh, yeah,
that
and he's
awesome.
got 2 skydives under his belt, one tandem, one AFF. So, yeah, he's
awesome.
Yeah, he's a parachutist over 90,
We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about your demonstration experience. Just wanted to have you maybe elaborate on a couple of the highlights, maybe a couple lessons learned, a couple funny stories.
Oh, yeah, lessons learned. Let's start there. That's the easiest because I learned a lot. I was a mess as a demonstrator. Lessons learned. I spent too much time in bars chasing girls. I think now that I'm older, I wish I would have spent more time at landmarks. I went and saw the arches out in Moab and things. There were a couple incidences that I stepped out of the hotel and actually went and did something productive. Very few. Most were very unproductive. But I would say lessons learned, if I were to go back and tell my 20-some-year-old self, I'd say go see some stuff. Like, go learn something about this country that you're going to gallivant all over and learn so much about. Funny stories. Oh my Lord, funny or incriminating? I'm not sure where to.
It's a fine line sometimes.
Yeah, it is. It is a fine line.
Well, anything you learned too? Any lessons learned? Like about leadership or structure. I remember when you first got to the team. I can remember you being a wild guy, and I remember that when you first got to the competition team as well. But you'd even matured a lot, since then, from what I could tell from my perspective.
Yeah, I can't say much as just a general demonstration parachutist. I can say on that I remember seeing you. I'm going to tap into you here for a minute. You came on a trip with us, strapped with us from the competition team, and I remember straps at the time didn't load the airplane. They didn't unload the airplane. They didn't touch gear. That was a new guy thing. The old guys just kind of sat back and watched what everybody was doing to make sure everything was set up properly. And you came in with all your experience and all your time on the team, and you were just like, where can I help? Where can I help? And you just started kind of throwing gear with the guys. And I'm like, who is this guy? They're like, oh, that's Matt Davidson. He's one of the competitors. I'm like, yeah, I know who he is, but why is he up here helping us?
I was just, you say helping, but I think I was getting in the way more than anything.
No, yeah, probably, but it was an eye-opening experience as a new guy to see this old guy, and there's, just so people understand that are listening on the Golden Knights, there's definitely a pecking order from people who first make the team to people who have been on the parachute team for 10 plus years. The new guys obviously do all the grunt work. Second-year guys, everything doesn't matter as much as time on the team. And you had so much time on the team, probably more than anybody on the demonstration team at that time, almost combined, to be helping us. So it kind of opened my eyes to like, okay, there's still this team mentality here. So that just kind of.
I really appreciate that. I want to elaborate on that real quick because,
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. I was listening to Jocko Willink in an audiobook. For those who don't know, Jocko Willink is a...
Love Jocko.
Yeah, he's got a podcast. He's written several books, and the book that I'm listening to on audio right now is Leadership Tactics and Strategies, and he was just talking about a very senior Navy SEAL at the time when he was a young guy, which they called him Delta Charlie, DC, and he told a story about Delta Charlie helping out take out the trash, and it struck him as, at the time, here's a senior guy, whereas I think the most senior guy in their unit before that wouldn't touch any kind of menial task like that. And when I heard that story, about him taking out the trash and how Jocko at the time, he just kind of stepped back and he noticed that, and that played a big thing. When I heard that yesterday, I was like, I need to do more of that, and I didn't realize that that maybe that's something that has come out before. But I really appreciate you mentioning that.
It plays into a young mind, when you're especially when you're looking at one of your senior guys. It plays into how you view the team mentality as a whole. And Jocko, for those of you listening, Jocko has a YouTube video called Good. And I think people have probably heard it on other podcasts, but if you haven't heard it, listen to Good. If you're ever feeling down about yourself, listen to Good. But I remember that, and Kurt Eisenbarger too was another kind of key player in that, because BK was kind of the hothead. He young guy on the 8-way team. Once we got there, he was definitely the hammer thrower. And then when Kurt came on later, I remember looking at Kurt the same way I looked at you, as kind of the senior guy. And especially early on when Kurt came on, his ability to step back and go, okay, I'll try that, And I'm like, I thought this dude had all the answers. Wait, you don't have all the answers? And then that's when you realize, well, nobody has all the answers. But if you take a step back and go, I'm just constantly learning here, then,
And now that you're in the rigger loft, what have you learned now that in hindsight you think could have helped you, 10 or 15 years ago, either on the demonstration or on the competition team?
That could have helped me? Honestly, I don't think there's much that could have helped me. I think my teammates helped me as much as they should have to get me where I'm at. I think making the team was what I needed, and the people that were involved in my life and found my weaknesses definitely played a role in getting me where I am now. But just to kind of expand on, as far as my move to the rigger loft, it was more for me about giving back to the parachute team, because as a competitor, you're jumping every day, every week. You're always out at the drop zone. You're always working. You're always trying to refine your craft. Where being in the rigger loft has, over the last almost 2 years now, has given me the ability to give back to the team in a way that I never thought I had, because the team has given me so much. I feel like, I can travel with the demonstration teams if they're a person short. I'm constantly helping people with gear and order things. It's my reach is a lot longer than it was as a competitor, and I really, really enjoy that. As corny as it sounds, I mean, I really just aim to please, and at times I got to break some hearts. Sorry to the crew team guys that are trying to get started up. PD's never going to make those canopies, but yeah, it's been a good couple of years, and like I said, I've found a new kind of crew of people that I work with, which is the headquarters element, and it can be difficult at times, especially because headquarters is always changing. Where the 8-way team was, we would stay together for years at a time, and then somebody would leave, and then we'd stay together years at a time. Where here, it's kind of a constant movement of personnel, so you have to learn different personalities, but. Mentally and emotionally, I think the move for me out of the competition route has been really healthy. It definitely holds a place in my heart, and I'll always remember those times as some of the best. I mean, times with you and, knocking on my door. Or, we wake up and we're watching videos on the road and training camps and stuff like that, and hiking mountains together, like those things. You can't take that away from me. But yeah, at some point I felt personally I had to move on to something and do something different, not necessarily better. But
what are your visions for the Rigger Loft in the future? It sounds like you're going to be there at least a few more years, if not longer. And do you have any visions of how the Rigger Loft can possibly help the rest of the team on a bigger scale?
Yeah. So, stepping into the Rigger Loft, it was kind of like stepping into the unknown. I knew as a parachute rigger the basics. I didn't really know what being the guy in charge of the Rigger Loft would entail. And there's kind of a lot of clout there where people come to you for your opinion based on your experiences on the team or your time there.
What it reminds me of, I kind of equate it to being a bartender. You know what I mean? It's
it
like
is.
going into the bar and say, "Hey, man, get these issues," and you guys probably get it from each one of the teams.
No, that's totally it. Like, people just kind of swing by the Rigger Loft and they want to vent, and we're like, well, here, let me slide you another. And no, it's
Another closing loop.
Yep, no, it's a great place to work. No, as far as like visions for the Rigger Loft, I mean, the Rigger Loft is it is what it is. We give you stuff, you give us stuff back, sign a receipt, and move on. But as far as visions are concerned, I feel like the Rigger Loft, they're kind of like the unsung heroes. They're a lot like the aviation detachment. I got to give a shout out to those guys. They're the unsung heroes of the parachute team. Without aircraft mechanics, none of what the parachute team does would happen. Absolutely nothing. So without the Rigger Loft, nobody would survive what we do. I mean, so in some way, we need the pilots to fly, and you need the parachute maintenance technicians to do what we do, or at least to do it more than once. So I don't necessarily have a vision. I have ideas to try and make the organization better as a whole. I've been involved in the Golden Knight Assessment and Selection Program once now. I was the assistant team leader last year. I have been asked to be the team leader this year.
Since we're on that, I think it's a great opportunity to tell those out there that might be interested in coming to the team. Can you give them some information about that?
Yeah. So if you're interested, come to the Army Parachute Team, the Golden Knights. You have to be active duty military, willing to go to Airborne School or already airborne qualified. A minimum of 100 jumps, which can be wavered by the chain of command. If you have less than 100 jumps, flawless civilian and military record. You need to have a military travel card. And we take applications every year. We do tryouts once a year between, September and we do tryouts between September and October, and we stop accepting packets, I believe July 15th, but don't quote me on that.
So there's a little bit of time there if they want to do it.
Yes.
So nothing's changed. That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed with that due to COVID-19?
No. So as far as our guidance is concerned at this point with COVID, it is full swing right now. So we are still holding Golden Knight Assessment and Selection. It is subject to change. Depends on what the state says, depends on what the Department of the Army says, whether, with people traveling in and out of state. If the Army says that we can do it and they're going to allow people to come from out of state, they're going to have to come from another, say they come from Texas at Fort Bliss. They'll come here 2 weeks prior to GCAS, Golden Knight Assessment and Selection, and they will spend 2 weeks here and then start the selection process. If that is not a problem, then they'll just come here and start. But if they can't travel out of the state, then we're only going to select local people to come to the program, people from Fort Bragg or within North Carolina.
Gotcha.
But as of right now, yes, it's in full swing, awaiting further guidance.
You were one of the, I know we're going down several rabbit holes here.
No, let's do
it. You were one of the guys that I think was most active in my memory as far as trying to get outside our normal avenues of recruitment. So you would see someone who had some potential to be on the team, and you would really kind of take them under your wing. From you didn't know them from anybody. You'd go up and talk to them, and some of those people have gotten in the Army. I'm not sure if any have gotten on the team, but I just wanted to give you props for that, because that was really cool. Even though one of our main mission focuses, or one of ours, I still talk like I'm on the team, but
I love it.
On the Golden Knights is we're there for a recruiting tool. And sometimes I think with the competition, like you said, the competitors can get so focused and in the moment, concentrating on wanting to win competitions, doing better in the next training jump, that we get so focused in that. Sometimes I think it's difficult for some of us to take those blinders off and to go out and actually do what one of the main missions is. And you did a great job of that. Is there anybody that you can think of that you've gotten in the Army that?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple. I would have to give a shout out to Jesse Stoller. I brought Jesse Stoller into the Army, brought him through the Golden Knights, watched him and his family move up here from Florida. I met him and Javier from the wind tunnel here at XP. They were buddies at the time, working down in Florida, and Jesse Stoller, and then went on to be a multi-world champion and far better skydiver than I could ever wish to be. I hate you.
Jesse's a freak of nature.
Yeah, I hate that guy. But no, I mean, it couldn't have been a better fix. But yeah, I really just, and that goes back to the passion of just me bleeding black and gold all day long. I've always loved the parachute team, and if I could share that experience with one person before I get out, I always thought that would be something special, because if it can change their life in any way. And Jesse, he's talked about, I don't know if he wants me saying this, but has talked about possibly going on to be an officer in the military, and God knows he's going to go on to do great things. But, I've always loved sharing my story with people and hoping that they will share theirs. And, I don't even need a name drop. I want them to go, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I ran into that guy. And it could have been a 5-minute conversation, while a guy was outside having a cigarette, and like, hey, man, do you ever think about skydiving or joining the Army? And he's like, nope. Be like, well, it's better than pushing this rake around the yard, And then next thing you know, they're they've got a career in the military, and they're staring down the barrel of a great retirement and something that can support their family. And if I had anything to do with that, that's fantastic in my eyes. So it's just.
Yeah, so many great opportunities with the Army, and I think that's a pretty good place to start to cap it off. And there's something I want to do here real quick, and it's not something that I've done before. Taking a cue from Tim Ferriss, he usually has a number of bullet questions. So I just want to ask you a few things I can remember when I was a young skydiver, looking up to some of these other competitors that were where I eventually wanted to be. I can remember one in particular, Chris Wagner. I wanted to know what kind of music he listened to. What gets this guy going? Because music, is always something that got me going. And I was like, hey, what kind of music do you listen to? And I was ready to take mental notes. I was on edge, and he was like, whatever gets your juices flowing, man. He gave me that answer, walked off. He dropped that little bomb, and I was just standing there blinking. But he's totally right. But anyway, so let's get to these. I know you're a big movie buff. What's your favorite movie?
Oh, God. Favorite? All right. Favorite movie. This is not going to be a fan favorite, Matt. Or the original Bad Boys with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. Big car guy. He had that 1994 911 Porsche 3.6 turbo. My favorite car. Jesus. I mean, there was a lot about the car. I'm not going to lie. A lot about Michael Bay, big Michael Bay fan, and then... I
was going to say, I remember that was one of the things we were talking about earlier when I was able to do the Transformers, meet Michael Bay. I remember you were like, man.
Yeah, screw you. That's not fair. But that's totally awesome that you got to do that. And it's funny because with the Transformers, as big as the Transformers were, sorry, Michael, I hated the Transformers movies. I didn't hate the movies themselves. Let me rephrase that. I hated the direction that Michael Bay had taken. I felt like he had kind of sold out with, big corporate Hollywood, and he was making these very digital films where he kind of came from this very raw. He did The Rock, he did Armageddon.
The way he shoots his frames, man, and his lighting, yeah, it's totally different than anybody else out there.
Yeah, and then when he took it to that digital realm and it became so busy, it was more kind of for the kids. And don't get me wrong, they were great movies. They were very visually busy. They'll give you if you have epilepsy, don't watch them. But But yeah, they're just very, very busy. But he seems to be kind of coming back to his roots, and he produced the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre with what was it, Jessica Alba or Biel, which I always get those two confused.
I do too.
But yeah. So I would have to say Bad Boys.
Favorite book?
Favorite book? I don't read. I don't read. No, favorite book. So I really don't read that much. But, God, if I had to pick one, you know what? I do have a favorite book. Anybody who loves to read is going to hate me for this. Is it the 48-Hour Chef? You actually gave me that book. That's kind of been. It is the 48-Hour Chef, right?
Yeah, Tim Ferriss.
Tim Ferriss. Yeah. He. I still boil eggs his method. As stupid as it sounds, but I love the way that he broke everything down as far as cooking, and the fact that he took the time to really look at the dumb aspect of cooking. It's like, hey, look, you may not know how to boil. Let me teach you how to make toast. First, get a toaster, okay, and then from toaster you're going to go by bread, all right, and then from there's a dial. Start at 1. And then dial it up until you see the brown that you like. Like, he really kind of broke it down Barney style, and I love that about him. But I still pull that book out to the day. It's one of my go-tos if I'm doing something that I haven't done before or something that I don't do a lot of. But yeah, I would have to say the 48-Hour Chef. That'd probably be my favorite book.
That's cool. It reminds me of a story when I was I had just made the Golden Knights, and I remember I moved in. With a couple guys from the team, Steve Baker and Gary Winkler. And I can remember going to the grocery store, and, I really didn't know what to get. I was just getting into the bodybuilding stuff, pretty heavy at that time. So I was like, oh, man, okay, I just need some extra protein, lots of carbs I got to have in it, So I get some spaghetti, and I remember I didn't know how to make spaghetti. So I had to call my mom up, and she probably remembers this, but I'm like, Mom, how do you make spaghetti? I didn't know how to boil noodles. I don't think I even knew what boiling was. It's pretty sad but true.
That's awesome. I still, I'm married to a Hispanic woman, and I still can't cook rice. Rice. It's like boiling water with.
It's easy, man. I'll give you the secret. You go out and you get those bags where you can, heat them up in a minute and 30 seconds.
I'll still fuck it up. I'm sorry.
That's all right. What's your favorite type of music to get your juices flowing for skydiving?
Oh, for skydiving,
or for anything where you want to get your.
So music for me has been very, very fluid over the years. Being a, I would say, retired musician at this point. I'll tell a little story. I've never told anybody except I think my wife this story. So when I was a child, when I was very, very young, and I got into music and listening to music, the way that it made me feel, I used to think that I could breathe in the music and it would change how I felt somehow. With that, I've kind of carried that with me. Now I know that's not true. It's called oxygen. So that's
great. When you said that, I started getting tingles, man. I was like, that's how I think of music too.
Yeah, it's almost you get into this thing and you just take it in. Well, come to find out, to no dismay here, that your smell affects your memory more than anything else. And a lot of times I will experience things at different times and different locations, and my ear is very in tune. I love Shazam, by the way. If you're a music lover out there and you don't own Shazam, buy it. It's an app. It's great.
We're probably showing how old we are right now because
there's
every
probably
kid out there
else
has heard about Shazam and there's something else.
But yes, Shazam, love Shazam. But I'll be in a situation, and I remember when I was young, I didn't have Shazam. I didn't have a phone, but I would want to hear the song. So the only thing I could do was call the radio station and have them replay it. and then try and figure out who it is based on, some guy coming on the radio and this by so-and-so. It's going to be, and I'm like writing it down. I'm like, okay, I got to buy that. And then I have to convince my mom to drive me to the store. It was this whole ordeal. Now you just pick up your phone and you're like, got it. So, yeah, as far as getting the juices flowing, I have such a wide array of music that I listen to, from country to rock to classical to pop to everything. I mean, I'm all over the map. It's really what is in the now. What experience do I want to re-experience based on where I was when that happened? A teammate of ours, Corey Hood, that died. A lot of people have probably heard about it. The Golden Knight who died up in Chicago. The song that I was listening to, I was in Wilmington, North Carolina, at the beach with my wife and her sister and her brother, and we were in a bar just enjoying ourselves, having a good weekend. When I got the call that this had happened, and there was a song playing, and I recorded that song and I listened to that song, and it reminds me of him. So when it comes to jazzing myself up for a competition, it just depends on what kind of mindset I'm in at the time as to how I want to feel for that round. If that's too complicated of an answer, I can re-explain.
No, it's not. My next question was going to be, what song would bring back waves of nostalgia and take you right back to that moment? So you kind of beat me to the punch on that one, talking about Corey. Would you care to divulge that song?
Oh, about Corey. Yeah, it's called Shortyville. The song is called Shortyville by, I can figure it out here. It's a trombone song. It's a very, very jazzy song. We were in a jazzy restaurant, having drinks and having lunch, and I loved it. It's not a somber song. It's a very jazzy song, and I was in a very, very good mood at the time when I got the news, and I think that's why I actually liked the song, because I was in a good mood when I heard it, and it always puts me in a good mood when I think about Corey. As unfortunate as the situation was with him passing away, which was just a dark time for the team because the whole team was kind of shut down. Nobody could jump. Nobody could do anything. Everybody was kind of stagnant, and it felt very disrespectful to the kind of person that he was. So the song, it's called Say That to Say This, Trombone Shorty. But a great song, great album. But yeah, that was the song, and it sticks with me. I have it in my phone. I remember it, and but yeah, to kind of break it all down as far as what like you said, he couldn't have said it better. Whatever gets your juices flowing.
Yeah, Chris Wagner.
Yeah, I can't beat that.
Yeah. And now for the last question. Well, first I'd like to say thanks for sharing that intimate moment with us, and
thanks.
I'd like to get to the last question, which is, what general advice would you have for anyone else who's looking to embark on a champion's journey of their own? I've listened to every single one of your every single one of your podcasts. And I think you're the first guy I send them to after they're done. Ready.
Oh, they're fantastic. Listen to every single one. And you've had a lot of really intimidating people on here as far as I'm concerned. So there's some hard stuff to top. But as far as, chasing your own journey, to me is, taking that step every day. I'm not going to say anything like Neil Armstrong here. I can't top that. But taking a step into the unknown, doing something every day that makes you uncomfortable. Be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think no matter what you do and whatever journey you're trying to walk through, whatever path you're looking to cross, if you can get comfortable being uncomfortable, you're going to find yourself in a position someday where you're doing everything that you want to do and you're as happy as you've ever been with as much or as little money as you make. Whether you live out in the boonies or a big mansion, you're just going to be in a place where you're like, this is where I live. This is where I want to be. And get comfortable being uncomfortable. I'd say that's my best advice. Of course, who am I? We could ask Gandhi, but I don't think he even knows.
That's great advice, buddy. This has been really special for me. I've learned some things about you. I've known you for a long time, and I've still learned a lot of things about you with this. It's been super special for me. You're, we were peace partners for almost 10 years, and you're one of my closest friends, even though we haven't seen each other in a little while, man.
Yeah.
I still think of you as one of my closest friends, and it's been super special for me, man. I really appreciate it.
Dude, I appreciate you having me. I could not be more happy.
Take care, buddy.
Hey, you too, brother.